Genshin Impact finally dropped one of those videos we've been waiting for, a teaser with a lot of extremely important information but also tons of questions that will stay unanswered for a little longer, which means that Nocry is gonna be even more important than we initially thought. We will try to answer those questions today, but first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. Now, before we start the video, I have something to say. After almost 5 whole years, we should have learned not to believe the most obvious explanation, right? The easier it is to understand or the most obvious something looks, the higher the chance it's wrong and that they managed to mislead us, and this video is no less. So, while for some people I'm coping because my theories were wrong, which makes no sense to begin with considering my disclaimer, what I'm actually doing is to simply explore every single possibility, trying to find a potential twist in the story within the not unquestionable statements we've heard. I mean, wasn't it so obvious that the omnipresent god in Inazuma had to be Istaroth, and in the end it was actually Ronova all along, just like I said? That was a possibility, one that wasn't that obvious, but I explored it anyway and it turned out to be right in the end. With that out of the way, let's walk down our celestial stairs and let's get this video started. Let's start with the main problem the Shades are facing. Asmoday, they finally said this name, is missing. The Shades, or better yet Ronova, Istaroth and, as one of my viewers called her, naberius daughter, are desperately looking for her and they don't know where she is. They're basically trying to find her in different quote-unquote spaces, since she's the shade of space, but they still haven't found traces of her. The space this video takes place in is something that both Istaroth and Daughter messed up with. Daughter apparently created people with the power of life she acquired by devouring naberius, and Istaroth bestowed history upon them, which after a space and time for you seems to be one of her powers, what I defined as the power of creating timelines. For some reason, Daughter recreated Under's daughter, who is teaching some kids about the Shades under the tree in Windrise, but she was eliminated by probably Asmoday's powers because she most likely talked about something she shouldn't have, that is what Asmodee did to the twins. In the end, Ronova put that space out of misery since it had been tainted by the ruler of space and all life inside of it has been rendered unstable, and the way Ronova got rid of this space was by destroying one of those countless cubes that apparently exist in space, the same one Asmodee used against the twins, but also those we saw in Khaenri'ah. Considering that Asmodee's power is related to space and she used those cubes to catch twins, but also that she looks like Yana, then those cubes may be countless spaces, or domains, or as Lumi would call them, worlds, although we could even go for simulated words at this point and it would probably still make sense. The way I see it is like alternative versions of that, like bubble universes, each created by Asmodee, reason why the Shades are looking for her inside of them, because it's highly possible that she's hiding in one of these cubes and Daughter basically tried to lure her out by having Under's daughter reveal her secrets. Moving on to the next point, what happened to Asmodee? Well, it seems that she split off from the other Shades without giving them any kind of explanation, and this led Istaroth to think that she betrayed them, which is what she says in Japanese instead of switching sides. But how did she betray them? Well, this is what the thing I said in the disclaimer comes into play. Even though Ronova said,
"We are Shades, shadows of the heavenly principles,"
I still think there is a huge chance she didn't mean what most people think she said. The options, at least based on what I can think of, are potentially 3. The apparently obvious one is that the Promoted One and the Heavenly Principles are the same entity, so the Shades were created by the Heavenly Principles. As I said in my video about them, there's a lot of proof against this theory, the biggest one being Nabu Malikata telling Deshret never to ask about the Master of the Four Shades, after telling him all about how the Heavenly Principles curse the angels, so you either can't talk about something or you can't, hence they are different entities, which leads me to the next option. The second who came defeated the Primordial One, took over Tvat, placed the Heavenly Principles as the ruler on their behalf, and they subjugated the Shades, who became their servants and have been tasked to sustain their will, or better yet to act on their behalf, to follow their orders basically. This is most likely what ronova meant when she said,
Since the heavenly principles cast us as shades,
because in the official translations in other languages like Italian, my own language, but also French and German, it has been translated as conferred the title of Shades or given us the role of Shades, which doesn't actually mean that they were created as their shades or shadows, so ronova never confirmed that the Heavenly Principles are the Primordial One, the entity we know created them. The last option is that the Primordial One was still defeated by the second who came, but it was devoured. These two entities became one, much like Granddaughter and Naberius, so the Shades can now technically be considered creations of the Heavenly Principles. I thought about this possibility because when Granddaughter said,
Better than being devoured.
Naberius, who really doesn't let one thing slide, didn't say a thing, which made me think that in this case, Granddaughter might not have been talking about her own situation. Now, it's clear that the Shades are rebelling against the Heavenly Principles, and it's also very clear that they can't just act in broad daylight, they have to be extremely careful to avoid being punished, and this is what Naberius was trying to remind Granddaughter when she said,
My dear Granddaughter, you know, I cannot allow you to think that way.
Because stating that she would have jumped at the opportunity to defeat the Heavenly Principles while they're weak could have caused them trouble, namely being punished, something that Naberius probably knows pretty well from experience, just like ronova. The Shades are using the fact that the Heavenly Principles are asleep, that they won't be giving them any order for the time being, to act on their own, to intervene in Tvat within the limits of their rules, making it look like they just had to do something because they are supposed to enforce the laws dictated by the Heavenly Principles. In short, they are finding loopholes to do what they want without retribution. So, moral of the story, the Shades clearly have a goal they want or need to accomplish, but this can't be achieved because Asmoday is either missing or has betrayed them, so it's something that requires all four Shades together. Remember Andes' daughter at the beginning of the video? She said that life, death, time and space, so the four Shades, abide no reason, they do not tolerate reason, and we do know that reason is the Heavenly Principles, the fifth artifact, the Circlet of Logos, aka the Crown of Reason. If the Heavenly Principles are the Primordial One and the Shades are their copies, does it make sense that they can tolerate them? They wouldn't be tolerating themselves basically. Next topic, but still about Asmoday being MIA, is her new master, which is something that once again has an apparently obvious meaning that doesn't make much sense if you think about it a little longer. I've seen that many players have immediately connected Asmoday with Paimon, so the new master would be the Traveler. In the other languages, the master is always male, maestro in Italian, maître in French, and Meister in German, and in the official videos the traveler is always either, plus Kukulkan called Paimon an emissary, so it could make sense, but remember what the Shades said in this specific video. They don't know where Asmoday is, they are desperately looking for her, they are about to intervene in Tvat again to lure her out, but they know that she might have betrayed them by following a new master that she loves more than she loves herself. If they were talking about Paimon, then they would know where she is. ronova literally saw her in Oshkanatlan, so what's the point of being so desperate to find someone you know exactly where she is? And this is obviously ignoring the fact that the gods have only ever had one single Arsketia name, while in this case she would inexplicably have two, Asmoday and Paimon. Now, as I said in my video about the Tolan quest, the Chinese word for emissary has been used for both the Shades and the Angels, and considering the Paimon is a traveler's guide throughout Teyvat, although she literally only knows Mondstadt, she makes way more sense as an angel. So, who is Asmoday's new master? If you're willing to keep an open mind and you think about it, considering that the Shades are rebelling against the Heavenly Principles and Asmodee has betrayed them, then this new master is none other than the second who came, the one who should have created the Heavenly Principles. This takes me back to my theory that the primordial one is the Gnostic Aeon Sophia, and the second who came is her syzygy, her male counterpart, Theletos, who, being a male emanation of God, fits the male master Asmodee now follows. Obviously, we can't end this video without talking about Pierro. He might have just one eye left, but his sight is extraordinary. He's been watching, or actually staring, at Ronova wherever she goes. Even the floating island of Celestia isn't far enough for him not to see her, and by the way, it seems that we finally know what's up there. Now, Pierro is one of Reindotter's old acquaintances, and that really sounds like he's one of the sinners of Caria, which makes sense because only a sinner would be powerful enough to be taken into consideration by the Cryo Archon in her pursuit to defeat the Heavenly Principles, but also because he retained most of his body, so he probably has the same ring Vedrfolnir gave Dainsleif. The problem is, which sinner is he? I've always believed that he was supposed to be Hraptatyr the Wise, because Hraptatyr is one of Odin's names and he is the one-eyed All Father, but also because Pierro was a court mage and thanks to his wisdom, he realized that what Caria was doing would have caused the cataclysm. But with the new weapon skins I'll never own, not even in a million years, we now know that Hraptatyr's goal is reason, which yeah, it was obvious from his title to begin with, but that means he's aiming at the Heavenly Principles. From this video instead, we learn that he is literally obsessed with Ronova. He was staring at her while she placed the Curse of Immortality on Caria, and even Ronova still remembered his gaze. This is obviously a problem because the sinner who is actually aiming at the Shade of Death is Rerir, Rehir of Solnari. Which one is it? I have no idea, but I kinda hope for Hraptatyr rather than Rerir. Anyway, that's not the actual important thing we need to discuss. Pierro said that the visions are the gaze of the gods, and especially for the people of Caria, they are not the Archons but the Shades, the Heavenly Principles, Primordial One, you know, those who actually rule over Teyvat, not those who oversee it. What Pierro meant was that receiving a vision doesn't mean being recognized by any Archon, as we already knew by the way, since they don't even know who is getting a vision or why, but they are a way for the actual gods, the Shades or the Heavenly Principles, to keep an eye on specific people. What this also means is that maybe a person doesn't become an Allogene, so someone who can ascend as a god, because they got a vision, but they receive a vision because they are an Allogene to begin with, so someone who can become problematic in the long run, so they have to be monitored, and this would explain why these people usually use their elements first and then receive a vision right after. In other words, they already had the ability to wield the elements from birth, and when their ambition unlocks their potential, they're immediately given a vision. Moving on, Pierro also says that while receiving the gaze of a god can be seen as a good thing by those who don't know the truth, and in reality nothing bad actually happens, the opposite is quite catastrophic. When a mortal gazes upon a god, their wrath and retribution is sure to follow, which is something he knows by experience. Caria tried to steal the secrets of the sky, they gazed upon the gods to get their powers, and the cataclysm happened. Lastly, and I think this is the most enigmatic part of the whole video, Pierro seems to be recalling something from the past. He's quoting someone's words, and considering who Pierro is, he might be reminiscing about a conversation he had with a god. But this is the problem. Since he knows what the price of gazing upon the gods is, He asked what the price of eliminating a god was, and this god didn't speak as if he had never thought about it. Who is this male god he was talking to, especially considering that for the people of Caria, the gods of the human realm are not gods at all? Since there are no male shades, unless this is yet another entity we have no idea about, then Pierro must have been uncharacteristically speaking about one of the gods of the human realm, and the only male gods that we know of are Zhongli, Venti, and if this conversation happened during the Cataclysm, the Belly Tsar, the one that made a pact with the first Torchbearer and the original Ratniki back when Notcry didn't even exist yet. And maybe in the video he was looking at a statue of him that exists in Asha Town. Of course, this could simply be a very poor choice of words and Pierro is talking about himself, but grammatically speaking, his refers to the last subject of the sentence, so the god in this case. To conclude, since the Tsaritsa is well aware that the real gods of Tevat have limits, just like Ronova said about interfering within the rules, the fact that Colombina seems to be missing in Notcry and that the Tsaritsa issued the Pale Stare Edict to send the Harbingers to Notcry to find her might be relevant to the whole fight against the Heavenly Principles, which begs the question. Just who is Damselet? Is she the first angel? But above all, if she's such a higher being as to become relevant in this fight against the heavens, why is she serving under a mere Archon? I think our only answer is quite simple at this point. We need to go to Notcry as soon as possible. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. My next video is still gonna be about understanding the universe around Tevat through Skirk's story, which should have come out this week, but I burned my hand so writing on a keyboard was not feasible. In fact, writing this script wasn't actually easy, but I just had to. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.